Hello everyone, and welcome to the long overdue finale for Aeronautica. This is Remleiz from 40k Theories.
Hi everyone, this is Fiaura.
Yes, it has been a while, hasn't it?
Longer than we would have liked because of miscommunication, and I'm going to be entirely honest, I thought we weren't going to do it, and then Remleiz came up to me and said, hey, did you still want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I've already done most of the research, just need to go, finish everything else. But I thought it was canceled.
Yeah.
So I got really excited, fired up the 3D printer, scheduled time in the wind tunnel, and then 2 weeks later, we're sitting here now.
Yeah. Even though you may have gotten one model slightly wrong, but that's been corrected.
You know, we might have got the model wrong, but it gave some interesting data.
That is true. So, let's just jump right into the first vehicle on our list, which is the Necron Doom Scythe. Now, Necron Doom Scythes are typically part of the first wave of Necron invasion used for sowing terror and confusion amongst the enemy. They are driven by a repulsor drive, which is also capable of driving people insane. And they're also a semi-autonomous vehicle which contains an advanced android brain as a pilot, capable of simulating billions of possible strategies in but a few nanoseconds, making them extremely formidable dogfighters armed with twin-linked Tesla destructors and a death ray.
That all sounds really impressive, especially when you just flat out call it death ray.
Oh yeah.
As an aircraft, however, answer is just no. Just as a reminder from our first episode, we used the formula lift equals the coefficient of drag times density times velocity divided by 2 times wing area, where the coefficient is the drag determined by running air over the model in question to see how heavily it drags in the air. The lower the number, the easier it flies. So there's your little science reminder. This travels through the air more like a bullet, which is really great if you want to go straight, but bullets don't generate any lift. There isn't any debate here. The shape and design generates no lift whatsoever. It honestly feels like a spacecraft only, but I am informed that this is actually an aircraft used for air-to-air combat in atmosphere.
That happens to look a bit like a croissant.
Yes, it looks like a croissant. That might explain why the Necrons have problems conquering planets. They designed their aircraft off of French cuisine. As far as weaponry is concerned, though, the Tesla Destructor, if turned up to a setting well beyond a natural lightning bolt, could cause significant damage if it stayed focused on a single point. Modern aircraft get struck by lightning all the time and still continue to fly. So I would need to know volts, amps, watts, or joules of this lightning bolt in order to get a good gauge of how realistic the damage it can do. If it exceeds the necessary energy requirement to heat up metal or steel to melting points, then yes, this would be an incredible weapon that fires at the speed of light. It would also be incredibly terrifying because you would hear the literal crack of lightning as it slams into you. As for the repulsor drive being able to drive people insane because of the noise, little known fact, it wouldn't be a repulsor drive if it made noise. This is because this type of drive pushes the air away from it and creates a vacuum according to physics theory. And in a vacuum, there is no sound. This is why no one can hear you scream in space. That poor guardsman who's being eaten by the gene stealer out the airlock window. Furthermore, it only takes the equivalent of a heavy metal concert to create the desired effect described in the boom. Something that can hurt your ears or cause damage, but someone who doesn't have excellent hearing won't be affected enough to actually stop them. So this would really hurt people who have very good hearing, assuming you somehow figured out a way for a repulsor drive to make noise in a vacuum.
Which seems admittedly quite difficult.
I would be impressed. The Death Ray is a laser-based weapon, which we are currently developing our own actual laser-based weapons beyond just pointing and guiding a missile. I don't have any knowledge here that's given to me about the amount of power this emits in terms of watts or joules or any form of energy number, but a consistent stream of 50 megawatts of power to the laser would achieve the destructive capability that is described, which, to answer your question, is about 10 times that of a las gun or 1/10 of a hell gun, which falls into normal parameter. You could build this. Like, you could actually make this if you could refine the laser crystal enough to take all 50 megawatts of power and fling it out repeatedly over and over again with a capacitor that could recharge in seconds. You could actually build this thing and rip tanks apart. So this is actually a weapon that we could go out and put together and make nice and neat. Defensively, this is an armored tank that could potentially take significant damage from the sheer amount of plating across it, and the plating is universal across the entire aircraft. It's made in a way that I would estimate if one particular plate was completely blown apart, it would not have caused enough damage to change its flight pattern significantly, which I don't really see how you could change the flight pattern of a bullet short of destroying it. Maybe push it out of the way, but as far as it's still going in a straight line, it still goes in a straight line. Remleiz, does the night version of this do better?
Well, let's find out. Now, the Night Scythe is basically a variant of the Doom Scythe, but it's tailored more for transportation, but instead of carrying a cargo hold like a normal transport, it has a wormhole, a captive wormhole within it. It forgoes the death ray, but keeps the twin-linked Tesla destructors.
I'm going to assume the wormhole is to bring in troops and
yes.
Okay. So, this is an excellent idea, actually. Assuming this thing can fly, it's a great idea. The Tesla destructors, as I described earlier, if I knew the wattage or power output, could cause quite a bit of damage to ground targets. To air targets, I mean, we have aircraft that get struck by lightning, so not sure how much that. But a wormhole, for those who don't know what a wormhole is, it's basically where 2 points in space fold together and create a zero distance. So if you're at point A and you're at point B and you want to get to point B, the quickest way to travel from point A to point B is through a wormhole, in which case you actually have to move zero distance to get to point B, no matter how far away point B is in physical reality. So, using a wormhole to call in troops means that a transport doesn't run out of troops until you physically don't have the troops to call. If even one of these gets behind enemy lines, it can cause havoc by just deploying thousands of troops instantaneously, who are not troops that have had to ride into battle. I mean, I get Necrons are tireless and everything, but if it was normal soldiers who tire and would be transport weary, so no, they don't have that. They literally just were sitting in their barracks, got up that morning, grabbed their weapons, put on their armor, walk to the wormhole portal, and then when the light turned green, step through. That's an amazingly cool idea. And honestly, I see very little fault in it, both in terms of physics, because they're actually using a wormhole as a wormhole is described in physics, and they're actually using it for something to just haul in lots of troops.
But can it fly?
It has the exact same design as the Doom Scythe, so it flies like a bullet in a very straight line and never able to turn.
But what if you reversed the orientation of the wings? Instead of them sweeping forwards, they swept back?
Now, this is where Remleiz said that I might have designed the model incorrectly, because when I looked up the Night Scythe, the original models that I came up with were with their wings flipped backwards. There's a picture on screen. I did find that if you reverse the wings this way, it flies incredibly well. While its aerodynamics are reduced from a standard flying wing configuration, it has a lift-to-drag ratio of 0.86, which is the number we use for determining the amount of air pressure that is above the wings versus the air pressure below, which means that for every point of air pressure below, every 1 psi below the wings, there's 0.86 psi above the wings, which means it does generate lift. Where the space shuttle is called the flying brick at 4.5 lift to drag, and a wingsuit is 2.5, and a Boeing 747 is 1.1. This thing flies like an F-17 Sabre or a MiG-5. No questions asked. So if you have reversed the wings of these Necron aircraft, they all fly. Hey, Necrons, can you do like a Batman or Transformers-esque thing where the wings just kind of rotate 180 degrees for us, please?
Speaking of wings, next up is the Necron Night Shroud, which has a similar body design to the Scythes, but it's bigger and has more wings sticking out of the wings. This is basically a bomber which uses as its primary armament a Death Sphere. Now, Death Spheres are basically antimatter bombs. On paper, quite devastating pieces of kit.
So, the Night Shroud, using the philosophy, if it doesn't fly, let's put more wings on it. Because it literally just has this outer wing wrapped around the other wing. Totally fails in any form of design equation because, as we learned in the 1900s, just putting more wings on something doesn't make it fly. It has the same flight characteristics as the Doom Shroud, which I would guess would be like trying to get a pig to fly through the sky with paper wings from 30,000 feet. I mean, like, same as the other aircraft, the offense is very unique. A container of antimatter of that size would literally destroy a city block at a time. I don't mean one building. I mean, you're driving down New York and you hit 34th Street and 4th Avenue, and there is no 34th Street and 4th Avenue anymore. This would cause roughly the same amount of damage I would expect using quantum physics and actual physics and just general interstellar physics of roughly 4,500 pounds of explosives, which is 300 pounds short of the entire bomb load of a B-17 from World War II. Except this is contained in one explosive the size of two people. I give genuine congratulations to the Necrons. It doesn't fly, but man, when it crashes and then antimatter phases into existence, I don't want to be anywhere near it.
So basically, this is more just something you just drop rather than try and fly.
Yeah. This is definitely you're dropping towards the ground at an inhurtable amount of velocity with no way to stop it. Dear Necrons, please, I understand you're a spacefaring race capable of having waged wars millennia ago. But now I fully understand why you lost to the Orcs. They have better aircraft and therefore probably have air superiority.
It's not flying, it's falling with style and extremely devastating explosions.
Ha! So it's the Michael Bay of flight shows?
Yeah, let's call it the Michael Bay aircraft. Let's call it that. Why not?
I believe we have an Imperial vessel next.
Yes, we do. The trademark dropship of the Deathwatch, the Corvus BLACKSTAR. Now, this is basically like a stealth dropship / gunship. It's small enough to slip through sensory grids and has highly advanced weaponry systems as well as thick armor plating, allegedly, to shrug off anti-air fire. It also has decoy flares, interceptors, as well as being armed with 4 Storm Strike missiles and twin-linked assault cannons, though some are equipped with prow-mounted las cannons in order to penetrate armoured targets, and many of them also carry BLACKSTAR rocket launchers under each wing.
I see that the Corvus BLACKSTAR has not forgone the rule of DACA.
No.
Dear Imperium, however, we've been over this before. Thick, heavy body with little stubby wings are not good bedfellows for aircraft. And what makes it worse, the air intakes are on top of the aircraft, vulnerable to air-to-air fire. The primary threat you have in an aircraft, by the way, is air-to-air fire, not air-to-ground. Or ground-to-air. But when you're trying to fly, you're trying to force more air under the aircraft than above the aircraft to generate a bubble of high-pressure air to lift the aircraft. This aircraft comes in at 5.7 lift to drag. It cannot fly, and the air intakes are counter to everything that we would normally design for an aircraft. But we're not done yet. Vector thrust is really nice. I mean, it makes a great idea for a skimming hovercraft, but the aircraft is so long that staying that low to the ground is hazardous to everything but clear environments. So if you're flying over clear grassland, you're fine. But I highly doubt you would want to be in this thing in a city where you need to make a tight turn, or in a jungle or forest where you would want to avoid getting caught on a tree, or the worst possible case, flying through a mountain range.
But how does it fare compared to other Imperial aircraft? Because just from the initial look, it looks like it will do better than, say, like, the Sisters Assault Ram, for example.
Oh, certainly. It'll do so much better than the Celestis Assault Ram. That is really hard to say. It might even fly a slight... Let me double check. But it might fly even slightly better than the Thunderhawk. Yes, it flies slightly better than the Thunderhawk. That's not an achievement.
It's something. May not be much, but it's something.
The reason why you don't want to use vector thrusting with a transport, and this is very important, so pay attention. Have you ever gone to ride on a helicopter?
I have not.
Okay. So when you go to ride on a helicopter, the main rotor is pressing air downward to generate lift, which is why a lot of the times you'll see people holding their clothes tight together, and it physically feels like you're being pushed into the ground away from the helicopter. Well, what happens when you do that with a jet engine?
I imagine something being barbecued.
Well, yeah, somebody's going to get barbecued if they're exposed directly to it, or somebody's going to get thrown a few hundred feet when it fires up.
Oh, it'll basically be like that scene from one of the Jackass movies where they just sit in a chair right behind a jet engine that's powering up.
Yeah! Seriously, this is not the greatest idea I've ever seen. In fact, it's probably the worst. Or one of them. Massive flat front doors, wings that don't support proper roll or yaw, only pitch of the aircraft. And you put the air intakes on top where they're going to intake less air since there's less air above than below.
Well, at least it's not as bad with the Venom, which actively directs fire into the engine.
Why can't the squats have planes?
Can you imagine squat sky trains?
Can you imagine a train plane?
Train, plane, and automobile. Driven by a squat that looks like John Candy.
Now that we've said all of... Oh, God, why? Now that we've said all of this, the armament is actually beyond words impressive. And the Imperial Guard have tried to outdo the Orcs.
It's Space Marines, not Imperial Guard.
The Space Marine... The Imperium itself...
There you go.
Has outdone everything they did in the Imperial Guard episodes, everything they've done in the Space Marine episodes. They literally just went all out. Assault cannons have the same effectiveness as a 20mm minigun, and the last cannons we've proven in the Space Marine Man-at-Arms episode, shameless plug done, can punch through a tank. But this is the first aircraft I've seen that actually relies on what we rely on for primary air-to-air engagement, missiles. There are entire aircraft that in real life that don't have guns, they only fire missiles. And the BLACKSTAR really has gone out of its way to equip itself with a lot of additional missiles.
Missiles, las cannons, assault cannons, interceptor launchers, decoy flare launchers. It's really properly kitted out.
Mm-hmm. The BLACKSTAR rocket launcher providing fire incendiary is just literally Vietnam era napalm. The air-to-air and air-to-ground missiles are effective, and the launcher able to either fire a chunk of grenades or fire swarm missiles. I mean, who doesn't like it whenever you look at an opponent and go missile lock and fling 20 missiles at them?
It's like full-blown Macross missile spam, if anyone actually knows what Macross is these days.
So, yeah, good job on armament. Armor-wise, it's a flying tank. It's like every other Imperium flying vehicle we've gone over. You need anti-tank guns. If it actually flies, you need anti-tank guns. Because just firing flak at it is gonna upset the pilot.
You scratched my paint.
I actually imagine this has the Megas XLR cockpit where he presses a button that says missiles, more missiles, and then slams his fist on something that says all the missiles.
Or the big one.
The big one.